Good morning, everyone. It's Lee Henson, President and Founder of Agiledad, and it's time for today's episode of the Daily Standup. Without any further ado, let's get started. Can you believe it's already Thursday? This week has just flown by. Maybe it's because it's a holiday week or a short week. We hope you all had an enjoyable Monday, and we hope you've enjoyed learning more about Boyd's OODA loop and about respect. Sarah did a great job with that. Today, we're going to focus on the third principle in Boyd's OODA loop, and it's decide. After having observed an environment and oriented on what's important, it's still the most difficult part to decide a course of action and understand how it links to achieving your longer term goals. I think this has to do a lot with combining consumer needs with strategy and making key decisions. And sometimes it's trying to hone in and decide what's the most valuable way to move forward. A lot of people use different techniques to figure this out. The one that the author of the original OODA loop document came up with was focused on outcome mapping. Now, you've heard me say a number of times that our main goal should be to focus on outcome and not output. We should try to achieve the best outcome possible with as little output as possible. You need to get into that envision the end state of mind approach. And I think that's going to help teams decide on immediate courses of action in order to achieve their long-term goal. So I'm sure you've seen this used many times before. It could be as simple as drawing a timeline starting now and ending in the future. Leaders and stakeholders are asked, use post-it notes or sticky notes to identify certain milestones that exist. And this sets constraints for the team that they need to achieve. So it gives them some borders. It gives you some way to establish a regular cadence for what needs to be delivered within a time frame. This is a little more high level than a roadmap because it's not at that level of detail, but at least it gives you some boundaries that you can use to really set up vision statements and to build out a roadmap. So these are identified as end states when combined with outcome mapping. It enables a team to have flexibility to assess risk, determine appropriate action in their given environment. So it lets you pull everything together into one simple package, which is exactly where you need to be so that you can see the desired end states. If you're trying to define outcomes, one other thing that's important is to determine whether it's a sequential set of outcomes or a parallel set of outcomes. And I think that sometimes you can have things that have to be done in a certain order because of dependencies. I think other times you can run some things in parallel and be okay. Sometimes it involves other teams or other team members or contractors or vendors. So I think it's important for you to really focus in and determine what type of layout you need when you're making those decisions. So the main benefit of having a lightweight plan is the ability to align a team around a course of action and allow teams to swarm, to be flexible. Oftentimes you hear me talk about the Apple model where you have a group of teams who swarm to get something done and they limit work in progress in such a way that they're actually achieving favorable outcomes quicker so that they can increase the frequency of the feedback loop, which is exactly what we're trying to do here. If we have clear outcomes defined, it's a highly valuable tool to ask the team or group to establish things into, I don't know a good term for this, so I'm going to use mini milestones. So if you have these little mini milestones, it helps you identify these slices that you can release. And it gives you a good definition of what the horizon looks like and how you could get there. So if you use the concept of this is what we absolutely need to have in our MVP, this is where we need to be with our first release or our second release, and then everything else approach, that gets your teams to the mindset of a regular planning cadence, and it helps them avoid trying to define a mythical perfect end-to-end plan that ends up just taking way too much time and doesn't get you to where you need to be. It allows you to plan out what you're currently working on and then be mindful of what's coming next. And depending on the type of work that you're working on, these slices can either be really easy to define or they can be extremely difficult. So I think it's important for you to understand. Sometimes when you have like a greenfield project, for example, or product, it often has, you often have to consider customer validation, development of prototypes, steel thread initiatives for your first set of goals. These are all things that you have to consider in order for you to get to where you need to be. So Boyd's OODA loop is designed to help us really create a path for where we're trying to go. And I love the fact that applying this is one thing, but applying it and taking action on it, which is the last one, is going to be the key to successfully implementing what you find as a result of driving through the OODA loop and figuring out where you are, where you need to be, and what kind of things you should be doing. So I hope this information was incredibly helpful to you. I try to keep it short and sweet because I know we're getting close to the end of the week. Remember, analyzing is one thing, defining is one thing, but making sure that at this part of the OODA loop, that we are defining and deciding a good course of action. So deciding where we need to be, because sometimes the decision-making process is the part where we get the most hung up. And it's the most important part. It's the part that can provide the most value, but it's also easily the part that can be the most expensive. So I think that when you're in that decision-making flow, it's important for you to understand, hey, this is what I'm trying to do. This is where I'm trying to go. But also, this is where we need to be. So I hope this was useful to you. As always, we encourage you to visit agiledad.com where you can learn more about this topic and many others. And if you have an idea for something you want to hear as part of the Daily Stand-Up Podcast, we encourage you to write to us. Learn more at agiledad.com. Let us know what you want to talk about, and we'll be happy to grab that and address it. And as always, we encourage you to stay healthy, stay well, and stay agile, my friends. Until next time, do take care.